Welcome to Rings and Things, where we discuss Tolkien adaptations and texts.
We're just two hobbits from the Shire, one bringing the other along on this adventure.
I'm your host, Agnes, and this is my co-host,
The Grey Second Guesser.
the Grey Second Guesser, JD. Today we're covering the second part of the Fellowship of the Ring, Chapter 2, Shadow of the Past. So let's just rip the bandage off right now, and let's start talking about Gandalf's magic and his moral culpabilities.
Yeah, so this continues from the discussion where Gandalf's explaining to Frodo about how much he knew about the ring and when mostly. I think Gandalf does make the point, and I mark it as a good one, that even if he had a stronger suspicion it was the ring, there wasn't much he could do about it. He couldn't take it from Bilbo because that would be the exact wrong thing to do.
Exactly, yeah. It would hurt Bilbo to take the ring, and Gandalf would be a poor possessor of the ring for the inherent power that he has himself.
Yeah, and then on top of that, depending on how taking it went, even if it was as gentle as possible, it could still be argued stolen, and I don't know if it's exactly canon or just a really good interpretation, but how you acquire the ring really matters on how it affects you. So
I'd say it's canon because Gandalf says that Bilbo acquiring it how he did was a big influence in how it doesn't corrupt Bilbo.
Yeah, so that is a big thing for Gandalf too. Then if he took it from Bilbo in any way and Bilbo dissented, it would be basically stealing.
Yeah.
But he does mention that Bilbo gave up the ring of his own accord to Frodo, and he says this is important, like you mentioned. So we were talking about a few episodes back if he had any magical influence, but it sounds like based on this, that outside of the social influence, it wasn't any sort of deception or magical charm. I mean, maybe if you could say like he was just counterbalancing the ring's magic to make him be able to freely give it up and make the choice, that might be the case, but I think using magic to influence the choice at all might have messed with the freely giving it up aspect.
Yeah, I don't think that Gandalf compelled him to give up the ring. Absolutely not. I do seriously wonder about the counter-ring magic, so to speak. Even things like when Gandalf says, wait, it's described as being in a commanding voice. He gives Frodo a quick look, and that makes me wonder if that's also counter-ring magic. So I could totally see Gandalf having used some counter-ring magic to help Bilbo freely give it up. The ring isn't going to let Bilbo freely give it up.
Right.
So he might need that extra counter-ring influence to actually make things free.
Which, if we're reading between the lines, that means he probably wasn't casting a spell to, like we said, compel Bilbo, but just like more like a dispelling effect on the ring's effect on him.
Yeah, to stop the ring's effect on Bilbo's heart.
Yeah. So, confirm it's the ring, they put it in the fire. Gandalf reads the inscription, the One Ring inscription, and this is the moment it goes from a guess to know, as he put it.
Yep.
But, I don't know, he doesn't seem startled. He just seems like soberly explaining to Frodo the consequence and weight of this revelation. I think by this point his guess was really strong.
Yeah. In some sense, I think he knew in his heart, even if he didn't know in his head.
Yeah. And I know we mentioned this a bit, but the fact he didn't want to tell Saruman about the ring, like if it wasn't of no consequence or he thought it was just a minor thing, he might have been able to just bring it up in passing, but I think it's that he was concealing might be a strong word, but neglecting to tell him about it means that it was like weighing heavy on him in his thoughts. You know, it's a big topic, so it's hard to bring up. More so than a small topic not worth mentioning is kind of how I read this.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like Gandalf is constantly texting Saruman and is purposely omitting things in regular conversation all the time. They go long times without talking to each other. Gandalf just hasn't made a trip to Isengard to talk to him about this specifically.
You mean they don't have regular coffee dates?
No, I don't think so. I don't think Saruman likes Gandalf that much.
Yeah, I'm of the mind that I think even if his guess wasn't exactly a no, like you said, it's like a spectrum, you know. He probably when Bilbo first got it, maybe even had no idea or no inkling, and it slowly developed as more evidence came up, and I think by the time Frodo even inherited it, he had a very strong suspicion, though.
Yeah. Well, if I had to make a fan theory, my own headcanon about how this might have gone in Gandalf's head, I'd say it went something like this. Bilbo picks up this magic ring. Gandalf assumes it must be one of the lesser rings that Celebrimbor made early on, which is amazing enough as it is.
Yeah, that's still a magical artifact.
Right. But Gandalf isn't going to go report this to Saruman necessarily. And as time goes on and Gandalf starts seeing that Bilbo isn't aging and he starts seeing the tendrils of corruption in Bilbo's behavior, he starts getting more concerned about what might this really be. Maybe it's a dwarven ring that escaped the dragons or something like that. It can't be the One Ring because Saruman assured Gandalf that the One Ring flowed out to the ocean. It's irrecoverable. And it would be a little bit like if Gandalf were a student at a university and he went to his math professor and said, hey, I solved the Riemann hypothesis, one of the millennium problems that's been, plaguing mathematicians for hundreds of years. You're not going to believe that student. I mean, technically, maybe it's possible. Math problems have been solved in more ridiculous ways than that.
Yeah.
But you're really not going to believe your undergrad student solved one of the millennium problems the first time he brings that to you. Gandalf isn't going to want to bring this idea that it's the One Ring to his colleague who has assured him that it can't be the One Ring. So Gandalf tries to research it, tries to figure things out, helps Bilbo give up the ring, passes it on to Frodo, does more research. Evidence is piling up that it might be the One Ring. Gandalf is still in somewhat of a denial state that it could be the One Ring because he's trying to reconcile this with what his colleague and superior has told him, until finally, eventually he comes to believe in his heart that it might be the One Ring. And then, in this moment in Bag End, it's become inevitable that this has to be the One Ring with the writing revealed in the fire. Yeah. And at this point, that Gandalf has proof of it being the One Ring. Now he's going to start thinking of bringing this to Saruman eventually. We'll get back to that theme in the story later on. He does go to Saruman, finds out Saruman's a traitor, and then doesn't give him the news.
Yeah. The thing about this is Gandalf could have thrown the ring in the fire pretty much at any time, so I don't know if it was, again, a little bit of almost hopeful thinking or wishful thinking that it's not the ring, because it would be terrible if it was. And it's I don't know, when you know your bank account's lower than you want, so you don't open the app, but you still really should check how much money you have in your bank account,
So Gandalf didn't know that throwing it in the fire would reveal the writing for a long time. That was part of his research. At the Council of Elrond, we'll see Gandalf explain further, but he went to Minas Tirith and he read old documents by Isildur himself, where Isildur speculated that when he got the ring, he had the writing on it, and he speculated that maybe the ring missed the heat of Sauron's hand, and maybe fire would bring the writing back. So it was Isildur's speculation in this old document he wrote in the archives of Minas Tirith that tipped Gandalf off to this idea that this could be a test.
Got it. So it wasn't something he knew from the beginning then to do,
no.
For example.
Ring lore is not Gandalf's specialty. That's Saruman's specialty.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think that the timing of this with Sauron and Mordor, I think that really lit a fire, so to speak. But I think it's a good example of why he should have confirmed, followed up, and researched these suspicions sooner.
And Gandalf admits fault in how long he delayed.
Yeah, and I get, Gandalf's not particularly human, but he has, emotions and moral motivations, and I get, again, I do feel like there was an aspect of, right now it's not doing anything no matter what it is, so let's not rip, that Band-Aid off. Let's give me some time to let it percolate and figure out what it is.
Yeah.
And then as soon as, now that Sauron's done consolidating power, he's like, we have to get to the bottom of this, quickly. Mm-hmm. But it still probably would have been better to do while Sauron was consolidating power among men, or an important thing for me, I noticed, did he not really trust Bilbo like he does Frodo? Would that be part of it at all?
Maybe. I wonder. That's a good idea. Because Bilbo came by the ring fairly honestly, and some of his first actions were pity to Gollum and everything, but also some of his first actions were lying about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I love Bilbo, but I do think he's, I mean, they even say, I think it was Tolkien who confirmed that, like, Frodo was the only one who could have done this journey.
Yeah.
Bilbo couldn't have done it.
Right. I wonder if opening his ownership with lying about the ring might be one of the symptoms of why Bilbo might not have been suited for this task.
Yeah, so I do think the biggest thing we can say, and I like, again, how much they cover this in the book, because in the movie it's very much glossed over, but Gandalf still maybe should have been a little bit more concerned of the ring, but I guess it's a hindsight type of judgment on my part.
And Gandalf readily admits he delayed, and it was his procrastination that allowed some of this stuff to happen, and we'll get into some of his own analysis of his own moral culpability when we get to the Council of Elrond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he does spell out a lot, though, about how, I mean, if we're taking him, and I don't think he's lying, so we're assuming most of not all of what he said is true. It really, I think, is important to me to highlight how little he knew about the ring while Bilbo had it. And in the movies, that's why I was like, why didn't Gandalf do anything about this, sooner or something?
Yeah, and I think a big part of it is that he just trusted Saruman. This was Saruman's specialty, not his specialty. Saruman told him facts, and he wasn't going to disbelieve the facts that his colleague and superior gave him.
Yeah.
But after they talk about the ring, then they get into the lore dump.
Yes. Yeah, he gives a lot of exposition that's covered in the prologue in the movies, and then obviously some more detail as well. Exactly.
This lore dump is largely lifted from this chapter and made into the prologue of the Fellowship of the Ring movie.
Mm-hmm. He describes the ring holders that were men turned to ring wraiths, and I really liked the description. In the movies they're like ghosts and stuff, but like he describes it in a way that makes it seem like more abstract even than like that, and mythological in nature. Mm-hmm. It seems like a real like living mythology.
And in reality, the ring wraiths aren't even really ghosts, because ghosts don't have bodies. The ring wraiths have bodies, they're just invisible bodies.
Yeah, they're very stretched thin.
Stretched very thin, so thin we can't see them. But they have physical bodies. They can't just blink out in one place and appear in another place. They actually have to travel. They are limited by the physical world still.
Yeah, they have to walk or otherwise move. I heard somebody ask about the Ringwraith's horses. Are those regular horses, or are they like...
Yes.
Okay, those are just regular horses. Got it.
They're real horses, tormented and twisted to evil use, but they are real horses.
Okay. He mentions it here, the rings of men that Sauron has, and the elven rings, which are hidden from Sauron, but he doesn't touch on the dwarven rings here. Where are those?
He actually says 7 the dwarf kings possessed, but 3 he has recovered, he being Sauron, and the others the dragons have consumed.
I missed that. Yeah, the dragons ate them?
Yes, Dragonfire is able to destroy rings of power, but not the One Ring.
Oh, like they burned them up with their breath. They didn't actually like swallow them.
I mean, I'd imagine swallowing them would also destroy them.
Yeah,
but whether they consumed them with their fire externally or whether they ate them and destroyed them with their fire internally,
I guess that's a small detail.
Yeah, it's a pretty small detail. But it gets at some of the ambiguity that can happen in a book versus trying to depict things on screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Consumed could mean a lot of things.
It has that, like you said, mythical import that we can read this. I always just assumed they ate them and destroyed them inside, but you make a great point that blowing the fire out consumes them outside as well. So, so this word is fairly ambiguous, actually.
Yeah. I don't know. It might be hard to say they consumed them if they destroyed them externally, but...
The rings were consumed by the fire.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the meaning of the number of the rings assigned to each race before. And I wanted to mention that in early drafts, there were 9 rings for the elves and 3 for the men. In another draft, there was also 12 rings for men and 9 rings for dwarves and 3 rings for elves. So the number of the rings shifted around. Eventually we ended up at 9 for men, 7 for dwarves, and 3 for elves, but it definitely wasn't something that Tolkien opened with.
He played around a lot with it. I like the 12, 9, and 3.
Yep.
But, he went with what he went with.
Yeah, he went with what he went with. It works. Leslie Strattoner, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, argues in her article, Sauron and the Preservation of Anglo-Saxon Ethos, that Sauron giving away rings is an echo of the Anglo-Saxon tradition of lords giving treasures to exchange for loyalty, though Sauron's gifts are, quote, ones that he controls, are tokens of evil, gifts designed not to reward but to enslave. So we can see that Anglo-Saxon influence coming in here again.
Yeah, kind of.
It's a perversion of that gift-giving that the old Anglo-Saxon kings did.
Kind of how that loyalty, that that system of vassalage I feel like is a taken to a dark extreme to show kind of, a lot of Lord of the Rings has positive depictions of royalty, but I feel like this is a good depiction of how horror movies or media will show a corrupted version of a social institution, and this is that for monarchy and feudalism and vassalage.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that that vassalage system gone literally corrupt with evil.
When you accept gifts from someone, you end up under that person's dominion in some way.
Yeah. In this lore dub, he mentions Gil-galad and Elendil, and if I didn't watch Rings of Power before this would have been probably mostly lost on me. But having a bit of an idea of who these people are really helped the lore dump.
Awesome.
I probably would have only recognized Isildur by name otherwise.
Yeah, since he is in the trilogy.
I don't think they also cover exactly how Isildur lost the ring, that he was attacked by orcs at the river. They just show him take it at the mountain, and then they show Sméagol find it in the river later.
In the movie, we see Isildur riding along, and then the orcs shoot him, and he's floating in the river.
Oh, okay. And then, maybe at that point I wasn't thinking about the ring as deeply, where it is and everything, when I watched the prologue then. Yeah,
I think we even see the ring fall off Isildur's hand, because I think I recall Galadriel saying that the ring betrayed Isildur, that it fell off his hand, and that's how the orcs knew to shoot him.
I think I need to rewatch the movies soon.
That sounds like a great idea.
Also, they mention, again, just a little explanation of why Sméagol and Déagol would have noticed the ring, because they were they were tunnelers, they're used to looking down. I think Gandalf is how he put it. Specifically,
Sméagol was good at looking down, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, Déagol found it initially, right?
Déagol did find it initially when he was pulled into the river, but Sméagol was the one specifically described as being interested in roots and beginnings.
Yeah.
And I noticed that Sméagol comes from a prominent and well-to-do family, just like Bilbo and Frodo. Also, he, like I said, he's interested in roots and beginnings, as it's described, which is not unlike philology, which was Tolkien's interest.
Mm-hmm.
What I get out of this is that it doesn't do only to look backwards.
Yeah.
Only looking at roots and beginnings, even in philology, isn't enough. One must look at the hilltops, leaves on trees, and flowers opening in the air.
Yeah, I don't know. I was having a hard time, and I read this part a couple of times. I was trying to get a feel, or if Gandalf, or by extension Tolkien, the author, was saying that this looking at roots and beginnings and down was an inherently corrupt or bad thing, or if it was just a neutral descriptor, an explanation. I kind of could see it either way from how the text had it described.
And some of this ambiguity is part of the beauty of the text as well.
Mm-hmm.
My personal interpretation of it is not that roots and beginnings, looking down, is an inherently bad thing.
Yeah.
And I get this because of the parallel with philology. Tolkien loved his philology, and that's looking at roots and beginnings, looking down, looking backward.
Mm-hmm.
But if you only do that, is where the problem is. Sméagol didn't look at hilltops, he didn't look at leaves on trees, and he didn't look at flowers opening in the air. He didn't look at the how his actions were affecting those around him. He didn't care about the world around him. He only cared about the roots and beginnings.
Yeah, I think any of the negative connotations that were there had more to do with the obsession and, the, like you said, the exclusivity. Like, that's more about why it kind of had like a negative spin when Gandalf was saying it. It wasn't that being in the roots in the things underneath the ground was inherently bad, but that he only did it to the point where he was specialized to do it, and that is why he found the ring. But it also it means like you said, he's not looking other places. He's not expanding or having a breadth of experiences.
It's the exclusivity, even the specialization. Tolkien was a specialist in philology. You can specialize in it without being exclusive. Tolkien loved to look at trees.
Yeah, I think the obsession is probably the word I would use, even and that fits in with Gollum's character.
Yeah, that's a good word.
And I think that's kind of a lot of times like how the ring is described too, is like people become obsessed with it,
For sure.
I do think that the movie breaking this up into 2 different prologues was a good, like, from a director's standpoint. In the book, I like it all at once, but these 2 scenes as prologues were really good, and they tied those movies together so well.
Yeah, I agree.
I do really still feel for Sméagol here. I always have so much empathy for him, like, even from the start when I first watched the films. Like, sure, him, in these books, this is the first you hear from him and see him, and him killing his cousin, spying on his family to see if they talk about him when he's not around. It's not a great first impression, but it's the one ring, like, how could have anything else have happened once that ring, like, came into his life?
Once he murdered his cousin for it,
yeah,
then there's not much other path that was going to happen here. But if Gollum had a different moral fiber from when Deagle found the ring, this could have ended differently, I think.
Yeah, again, it's the ring didn't necessarily make him murder his cousin, but it didn't
make him murder his cousin, but the ring plus Sméagol's already questionable moral character equaled murdering his cousin.
Exactly.
And then once he picked up the ring from such a bad beginning, like we talked about Bilbo's and Frodo's beginning ownership of the ring, compared to Sméagol's beginning, is, Sméagol failed the first test admirably. Yeah,
definitely. He failed it in flying colors.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just like the ring, amplifies when its alluring effect amplifies imperfections, and I feel like the imperfections he had might have just been like minor and like not good by any means, but like within a margin of error for like a good person still,
Well, he was certainly greedy because Deagle gave him a present for his birthday more than he could afford, and Sméagol still thought that he needed more birthday present.
Right, yes.
Which, I mean, is a small thing on the surface, but like you said, it amplifies what's already there.
Yeah.
Sméagol was already exclusively interested in roots and beginnings and not interested in the world around him. He didn't seem invested in his community or anything like that. So Sméagol's definitely coming to the table as quite a flawed character, and then murdering his cousin right away as soon as the ring is there. Like, he doesn't even wait.
No,
the ring has shown up and instantly murders his cousin.
Yeah, it's not like it was like weighing on his psyche for months, weeks, or days, even or even minutes. Really, it was near instantaneous.
Oh, you have this pretty ring? That's my birthday present, and I'm going to kill you for it.
Yeah, I wonder how much if it was like just a non-magical gem, Sméagol would have like maybe not killed him for it, but gotten to a fight for him for it even, like we don't have that background for that sort of information, I suppose, but
we don't, and I wonder if Deagle would have been more willing to give it up if it were a non-magical gem.
Yeah, that's another good point too.
The ring was already working on Deagle as well.
Yeah. Gandalf here, so he mentions he feels bad for Gollum. They kind of, I think they have this way later in the movie, but he kind of has a he tells Frodo, be empathetic for Gollum. That always wins major brownie points for me, and really shows Gandalf has some sort of moral fortitude to look at somebody so cruel and evil with pity and respect.
Yeah.
Some form of respect, I suppose.
Pity, at least, yeah.
Yeah.
Gandalf alludes to Ilúvatar when he tells Frodo, I can put it no plainer than by saying that Bilbo was meant to find the ring, and not by its maker. in which case you were also meant to have it, and that may be an encouraging thought.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny because he can put it plainer, but
yeah,
but doesn't.
Yeah, I don't know if... Do they mention Iluvatar much in the book? Like, I know they will probably in the Silmarillion a lot, but in the trilogy?
The name Iluvatar is never dropped.
Yeah.
But references to intent, like saying that Bilbo was meant to find the ring, are in fact references to him. But it's not overt in the book. I
actually laughed out loud. Frodo's response to it was fated to find him. It was like an emphatic, no, it's not. It's really funny and sad too, but like it's such a real response, you know?
Exactly. It's such a real human response, and I think it represents a, it's relatable.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, that's exactly what I would say if I were in his shoes. I feel so bad for Frodo, probably more than anybody in this whole book. Like, he did not deserve any of this, but I guess he had to.
Yeah, he was needed.
So there's a minor point. Smeagol convinced himself that it was to, I guess, assuage the guilt of killing his cousin, that it was a birthday present from his grandma. But how did Gandalf force the, Deagle aspect of the story out of him if Gollum believed that he got it from his grandma? If he deceived himself, how could he give the truth?
So Gandalf tells us, quote, "I endured him as long as I could, but the truth was desperately important, and in the end I had to be harsh. I put the fear of fire on him and wrung the true story out of him bit by bit, together with much sniveling and snarling."
Yeah, that sounds like torture.
At least psychological, if not physical.
Yeah.
We can't rule out physical by this, but I don't think we necessarily have to believe it was physical, but there was definitely psychological pressure.
I think the gentlest way that this description could be is, like, he would, like you said, following him around and verbally, like...
Well, Gollum was captured already.
Yeah, so he was captured and couldn't move, and at that point, that's already kind of, eventually, after a while, torture... Just being captured and
putting the fear of fire on him. What exactly does that mean? This is another example of ambiguous text. Like I said, at least psychological, if not actually physical.
Yeah, I mean, he could be speaking metaphorically, but I think with the word fire and wrung, it does make it... I do picture some physical means to extracting this information.
Yeah, I'm definitely open to an interpretation where we believe that Gandalf used some physical coercion here as well.
Which I don't think we see Gandalf be as cruel like that ever in on screen, so to speak.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But this is an example of what I would call gray morality.
Yeah.
Things aren't always black and white. This is a little bit of, the justification Gandalf gives for this is the importance of the information.
That sounds exactly like the ends justifying the means, though.
This is exactly the thing that I would point to as the incident that makes an absolute interpretation of ends and means a little gray in this book.
So, with the point where he was just talking about in this same, conversation about how he pities Gollum and Frodo should too, and then he says he, again, at very least had to, wring the story out of him by verbally or psychologically harassing him.
At least.
Really, that is really scary from Gandalf, to say, I pity this person, but I still can, if needed, wring the truth out of them bit by bit.
Which is why Gandalf absolutely cannot have the One Ring.
Yeah, definitely. That was...
This is not Gandalf's finest moment.
Yeah, and the fact that he admits it openly is kind of a good mark on it, I guess. He's not trying to conceal it or hide it either. I guess you could go either way on that, but I feel like...
He doesn't say it proudly.
He's not proud about it, and but he's honest about it, and he's not in denial about it. Kind of shows, at least he knew what he was doing, but was wrong. It makes it feel like, but I don't know. It doesn't make it feel like he wouldn't do it again, too.
It's very messy and very interesting and very not black and white.
Yeah. It does make this little bit here makes Gandalf definitely feel more like a, some sort of non-human extraplanar. Like, he is, but like he's a Valar, right? That's the term?
Maiar.
So it makes him feel like a little bit like a Maiar more than like a human, which when you watch the movie, you don't even know that he's not a human, really.
And I should specify, I used the wrong phrase. Maiar is plural, Maya is singular.
So he's a Maya.
He's
one of the Maiar.
Yeah.
Got it. So, yeah, this kind of, I did this, and I'm not, it's not a divine perfection or anything, but it does make it feel like, kind of like he's in a different league of the cosmic order of things, which he is, but this is like textual evidence for when he acts like it,
Yeah. If I had to pick the biggest thing that I'm offended about Gandalf doing, it would be this instance.
Yeah. Do you think this is like his lowest point in the whole canon and lore?
My knee-jerk answer to that is yes. I want to put the one caveat that speaking in absolutes, I want to reserve my answer if I think of something more, but right now, I think this is his lowest point. This is the thing that I am most upset about that Gandalf does.
Yeah, and I don't think he would have had to be so harsh about it if, again, I'm reconstructing back from my earlier point, if Sauron and Mordor weren't moving, and he wouldn't have had to do that if he put a little more haste in his investigation on the ring. I mean, I get that one thing leads to the other and leads to the other, but at the end of that chain of events, like, he could have avoided having to torture Gollum if he just looked into this sooner,
Yep.
Or he could have, questioned him and used a bit more of a carrot and less of a stick way to extract the information if he had more time. Not that would work necessarily, but it's, a consideration.
Yeah, try to heal Gollum more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they speak in this speech. He mentions that Gollum heads to Mordor, and then they're not very clear why he is drawn. Like Sauron's summoning him, it sounds like.
So the quote in the book says, "Mordor draws all wicked things, and the dark power was bending all its will to gather them there. The ring of the enemy would leave its mark, too, leave him, Gollum, open to the summons. And all folk were whispering then of the new shadow in the south and its hatred of the west. There were his fine new friends who would help him in his revenge." Mm-hmm. So I see an element of evil magic through the ring, and I also see enough tertiary influence that Gollum would have believed it to be his choice.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. Like,
I think it's a both-and situation.
Yeah. Yeah, so was Gollum going, from Gollum's perspective, are we supposed to surmise that he is going there to look for the ring?
He's going there to find new friends who will help him get his ring back.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. I also want to point out that I think Frodo is kind of, he's asking questions of Gandalf, but they're very pointed, and Gandalf seems defensive. I think Frodo's kind of on my side of this as well, for in this conversation at least.
Or you're on Frodo's side.
I'm on Frodo's side, yeah, definitely.
Gandalf's defense specifically is, quote, "Of course, my dear Frodo, it was dangerous for you, and that has troubled me deeply. But there was so much at stake that I had to take some risk. Though even when I was far away, there has never been a day when the Shire has not been guarded by watchful eyes. Mm-hmm. As long as you never used it, I did not think that the ring would have any lasting effect on you, not for evil, not at any rate for a very long time. And you must remember that 9 years ago, when I last saw you, I still knew little for certain."
I think for certain is such a strong modifier, though. Like, if he still knew a bit, like, he knew little for certain, but he knew he had a lot of guesses, as he put it earlier.
He told Frodo not to use it.
Yeah.
And I think there can be some danger in too much speculation. If he told Frodo, "Oh, I think this might be a super evil ring that'll eat you away," it might eat Frodo away faster for knowing that than to just say, "Hey, don't use this thing.
Yeah, that is, like, there is ways he could have handled it worse, definitely.
If I give you a pack of some really powerful drug and I say, hey, just keep this under your bed, never touch it, don't think about it, just keep it, it's not going to harm you.
Mm-hmm.
You might think about it less than if I said, this thing is going to make you feel awesome and it'll be so much fun, and don't do it.
Yeah. On the other hand, you know, if we're giving people, like we require that any medication manufacturers list all the side effects explicitly on the label. Maybe that's not the best thing, like, for magical artifacts, but, like, you know, it's very important that is something that is known before you purchase and take the medicine. I guess at this point, though, Frodo already has it, and it's a little bit different. It's not like he can make an informed choice, you know?
And I think there's something to be said for, even though Frodo has used the ring at some points, using it without knowing what he has versus using it after he knows what he has are very different things.
Yeah, I think we mentioned this with, like, Bilbo never knows exactly what it is while in his position, and he used it, it seems like, more frequently than Frodo did.
Right, and Bilbo escaped with relatively little harm for how long he had it.
Yeah.
Not harmless, but relatively little harm because he didn't know what it was he had.
And these are all unique considerations about the ring effect, you know, infecting you through your psyche, that being afraid of it and your knowledge of it really could have an inverse effect, you know.
Yep. So I think Gandalf is somewhat justified in having not speculated about the ring to Frodo earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. I get maybe not speculating out loud to Frodo, but I do think, again, and maybe this is part of whatever the rule of the Grey is. You said it's not his job to know about the rings, but I think he should have, even if he was hesitant to inquire with Saruman, to just do his own independent research elsewhere quicker than he did. Probably. Yeah. I don't know what else he's doing, though. He could be very busy balancing a lot of plates, though. This could have just been something that was on his to-do list for a long time.
And I think it's hard for us to imagine a world where we don't have instantaneous information transfer.
That's true. He doesn't have Google at all to look up the lore on the One Ring, you know.
Yeah. He's got to travel all the way to Minas Tirith, sort through piles of ancient documents written in languages that nobody speaks to try to figure out what might be true.
Yeah. I still think that part of the reason that he didn't follow up, didn't confirm, and pretended not to know what it was, or I don't know, I'm assuming he pretended not to know, I guess, but one of the reasons I think that may be the case is if Gandalf knew it was the One Ring, I feel like he would know, like, having it confirmed be the One Ring that long, it would have weighed heavy on him too. He's still corruptible by it to an
Absolutely.
extent. So I think, sort of like how he decided to not tell Frodo, he didn't confirm it until he could do something about it, or had to do something about it, maybe. Because knowing it was the One Ring would have wore on him, and he would have been influenced to take it. He might have been tempted to take the ring.
I love this interpretation. I think this is a great explanation. I'm going to adapt this one. I really like this.
So he was kind of shielding himself, and I think he knew, but that means he had a stronger suspicion if he didn't look into it because he suspected it might be the ring and it would corrupt him. Like, again, it's almost like the bank account thing. Like, not checking your bank account doesn't change your balance being low, you know?
Except that the difference here is if nobody knows it's the One Ring, it's protecting everybody. If Gandalf uncovers that it's the One Ring sooner, and then he takes it, that's a worse move than just letting the status quo be.
Yeah.
And if he uncovers it's the One Ring, and then Frodo has to live with it for a long time, or Bilbo has to live with it for a long time, that can also be worse than the status quo of literally nobody knowing what it is.
And so his speech about when he's offered the ring and he's tempted to do good with it, it seems to be coming from, like, personal emotional experience. Like, it's the opposite of when the ring was revealed to be the ring. It seemed very detached and logical explanation. Now, he's explaining why he shouldn't take the ring. It feels very personal, not detached or intellectual.
Yeah. I wonder if some of this comes from his experience wielding an elven ring.
Yeah.
He's not without experience with rings of power, even if he has never had the one ring of power. He knows what the ring of fire is and how he uses that. And Tolkien tells us what might have happened if Gandalf took the One Ring. Mm-hmm. Tolkien says, quote, "Gandalf as Ring Lord would have been far worse than Sauron. He would have remained righteous, but self-righteous. He would have continued to rule and order things for good, and the benefit of his subjects according to his wisdom." And in the margin of this letter, Tolkien adds, "Thus, while Sauron multiplied evil, he left good clearly distinguishable from it. Gandalf would have made good detestable and seem evil."
Yeah, that is heavy.
This is one of the most important lessons that I figure I've gotten from The Lord of the Rings. That forcing good upon others by means of force, whether by law or personal compulsion, no matter how good the good is, that is the highest form of evil.
Yeah.
Because it will only make good detestable and seem evil. The virtue of goodness can only be found through freedom.
Yeah, that is really very like fascinating way to look at that set of like moral ethics on compulsion and morality.
Yep.
I really, really do like that a lot too. It is interesting that Sauron in this text is explicitly, he says he multiplied evil, left good clearly distinguishable from it. But Sauron thinks he's good though, right? Or did? Is that come and go?
I mean, at least at some point Sauron would have thought he was good. And I mean, I would think that Sauron still thinks he's good. The villain never thinks he's the villain.
Right.
But
is it just because Gandalf actually is moral? Like, he has good morals and Sauron just thinks he has good morals? Is that the distinguishing thing?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest distinguishing factor here.
But the rings, and then that's to say the ring would corrupt his actual good morals and like, Tolkien put it, like, made good seem detestable and evil.
I'm reminded of a conversation we had in an earlier episode somewhere where you said that if you had the One Ring, you'd make everyone recycle.
Yeah.
I think that's what this is. Sauron doesn't recycle.
Yeah.
He's actually evil in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Gandalf would be like you, and he'd make everyone recycle with the One Ring.
Yeah.
And suddenly recycling would become detestable and seem evil.
Yeah, because people who were neutral on recycling see that people are getting punished for not recycling in terrible ways, for example, and now they think now they associate recycling with their neighbors getting executed or something.
Or just simply the compulsion, the lack of free will.
Yeah.
And so to oppose the lack of free will, you end up opposing recycling. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. That is really interesting. I wonder if you wanted to make... So, if, say, Sauron wanted to make something that is good seem evil, if he could try to enforce it to do that. If you could engineer it backwards as like a propaganda tactic.
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't know if that could... Like, this is all very abstract. I don't know how that, like, real-life application. Like, if I didn't want people to recycle, so I forced them to recycle so they didn't want to, like, societal... what's that called?
Reverse psychology?
Yes, societal reverse psychology. I could see it, like, from this frame, kind of making sense. I don't know if it'd play out like that, actually, though.
I think it could work if we were just talking about reverse psychology, but with the ring, we're talking about actual overriding of free will.
Yeah.
And so you just make people do what you want them to do. There is no reverse psychology involved.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, again, like, the ring, not only is it not only is it take away people's freedom, but it also corrupts the wielder at the same time. So no matter what ends you put it towards, even if you're trying to use your double reverse psychology plan, it will eventually just take the worst option. I feel like.
Yep, it'll corrupt you because when you take others' free will, that is the corruption.
Yeah. Yeah, I do remember our episode. We had a very long discussion about the moral, like, impact of taking free will and how there's very little, if anything, that outweighs really doing that, you know?
And for me, it was this quote that really hammered that home to me.
Yeah. Near the end of this conversation, and I don't know if he's just saying it as like a kind of pleasantry, but when Frodo leaves, he said, Gandalf mentions he didn't expect Frodo to agree. But what did Gandalf expect? Is he flattering Frodo here, or what's going on?
So we've mentioned before, but I want to point out again that Frodo can't bring himself to do anything that he thinks might bring harm to the ring. Mm-hmm. Even at this stage in the book, he can't throw it into his own fire because he thinks that might hurt the ring. Gandalf has to do that for him.
Yeah.
And I think maybe what Gandalf's getting at here is Frodo's willingness to go on this journey is some small crack of light that he's willing to do something to see this ring destroyed. Even if he can't do it himself, he'll do this other thing that might get him closer to that.
Yeah.
There was never any hope that Frodo could throw the ring into the cracks of doom. Gandalf knows that at this point, but he sees the goodness in Frodo's heart that he's willing to immediately think about leaving the Shire and taking this ring somewhere else to protect his people, and maybe get it one step closer to being destroyed, even if Gandalf knows that Frodo can't be the one to actually throw it in the fire.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things, like Frodo, even if he is unable to want to do harm to it, he, in his character, and he does this very much throughout the series too, he tries to get rid of it a lot. He's not compelled to keep it, you know. He tries to get rid of it, I think, 3 separate times.
He definitely offers it to people, but I wonder if he'd actually renege on that offer by the time, you know, if push came to shove.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, because all 3 of them thankfully reject it.
And I think if anyone accepted it, if anyone tried to take it from him, I think Frodo would change his mind and say, I don't think so.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, and I didn't know this when I watched the movie, but Aragorn's offer after Boromir tries to take it, a lot of people I've read said it was a test for Aragorn from Frodo. And maybe that's applicable to Gandalf and Galadriel as well, but a lot of them say he doesn't actually want Aragorn to take it. He was just testing Aragorn's character.
And I think that definitely has merit in the literary interpretation of the book. Mm-hmm. Like in this example where Frodo offers it to Gandalf, it's definitely a test for Gandalf, but I don't think Frodo is trying to test Gandalf. I think Tolkien is testing Gandalf.
Yeah, I don't think in this instant here where he's trying to give it to Gandalf, Frodo is testing Gandalf. And maybe I misinterpreted the points I read. I don't know. I'll have to, once we get to that point in the book, make it up for myself. But I remember somebody saying it was more Frodo was trying to, like, see if Aragorn was trustworthy, or if he's at least, like, because he just went through Boromir trying to take the ring, so he's just trying to kind of get reassured from his other ally that he's not going to do the same thing.
I can definitely see that in the movie interpretation.
Yeah.
Frodo doesn't directly offer it to Aragorn in the book. There is an instance I'm thinking of in the Council of Elrond, but it's not a direct offer the same way. And he definitely doesn't offer it to Aragorn post-Boromir in the book. Mm-hmm. When he does offer it to Galadriel, it's, once again, absolutely a test for Galadriel, but I don't think it's Frodo trying to test her.
Yeah.
I think it's events, it's Tolkien, it's Iluvatar, however you want to express it.
Sure.
Tolkien is testing Galadriel.
Frodo
is not.
That makes sense. I also will say that Frodo, I think at least twice, but I know in this conversation and in the movies they might put it at the Council of Elrond, but I think he suggests abandoning it somewhere where it's hard to find too. At least once, but I think twice. So he doesn't want to keep the ring is my main point.
Part of him doesn't want to keep the ring.
Yeah.
But I think part of him does.
Yeah, of course. I just think, like, you know, and then he agrees to go up to the mouth. I mean, he ends up going to Mount Doom, the very precipice of it, and even though he can't bring himself to harm it, he can get himself that close too.
Sam got him that close.
Yeah.
Frodo didn't get him that close.
Yeah. What I'm wondering is that you mentioned a few minutes ago that Gandalf knew that Frodo wouldn't be able to throw it into Mount Doom. He wouldn't be able to actually destroy it. So I'm wondering if his plan was, with Sam going along with him, if Sam was expected to like push Frodo into it with the ring on or something, like without Gollum being in the equation.
I don't think that such a bad means was expected for Sam to use, but I do think Sam's presence on the quest was meant to be a guiding light to Frodo.
Yeah. Like if Gollum didn't, and I know that's a big if, like, and that's kind of probably why I know Gandalf doesn't have exact precognition, but I feel like he knows more than he ever lets on, for sure.
Yeah.
And so I feel like part of the reason he is so adamant to defend Gollum is because he knows he's gonna somehow, maybe not knows, but feels or suspects or has an inkling that Gollum's gonna be instrumental in the ring being destroyed.
Gandalf actually says that his heart tells him that Gollum still has some part to play and that Bilbo's pity might rule the fate of many.
So I wonder if Gollum wasn't in the picture and it was just Sam and Frodo at the mouth of Mount Doom, what would have happened, you know?
Sauron would have gotten the ring back is what would have happened.
Yeah, that's probably the easiest answer there.
Yeah, I don't think it would have ended well. Gollum was necessary. That was... Bilbo's pity ruled the fate of everyone.
Yeah.
So, just one final small note. I wanted to mention that Gandalf gives Frodo his traveling name, making it actually his name in a sense, and removing any shadow of a lie from him saying that his name is Underhill. So, on the one hand, we have Gandalf torturing Gollum, and on the other hand, we have the technicality of his name actually is Underhill now. Yeah.
Although, I don't understand if Frodo decides, like, if he says said to himself, my new traveling name's Underhill, and gives why that would be a lie, if he decided ahead of time before telling people, versus Gandalf saying your new traveling name's Underhill, and then he tells people.
I think it's more to do with, like, the point of view narration techniques, but yeah, I would buy the premeditated my traveling name is Underhill self-giving of a name as well.
Yeah, maybe it's a stronger case if somebody else gives you the name, though.
Naming is definitely a big deal in Lord of the Rings, and other people giving you names is important. There's a few instances where a particular character gives himself more names, but usually that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
Taking new names has a certain questionability, I think, in the Legendarium, whereas being given new names doesn't have that at all.
Well, now I'm second-guessing our new bit at the beginning of the show where I give myself a new name every time.
Well, I like it. Maybe you'll have to take on some of Turambar's names that he gives himself.
Yeah.
So, I have one who wrote that for us today.
Yeah, I didn't really have much to write down about this. I was really enthralled with the conversation. I wasn't even thinking about the fictional authorship layer, like, at all.
It just sucks you in. The one thing that does not suck me in fact, it rips me out every time, is Sam's references to Lord bless you. And this is disruptive to me because of the implications of Christian theology. LOR apostrophe is definitely a colloquialism of Lord, meaning, like the Lord Jesus Christ.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm going to attribute this to another instance of the heavy hand of the early Tolkien editor.
Yeah.
Because we really don't see this in later instances of the text. This is a very uncharacteristic Christian influence in the text, and Tolkien was too persnickety about this for it to have been overlooked, but this one particular thing really annoys me, and I don't like it.
Yeah. I mean, in the fiction of the book being, like, transmitted and copied down and stuff eventually, maybe, like, a general blessing would have been... I'm again, this is a very generous take, but, like, somewhere eventually they just translated, like, a general blessing into Lord bless you, because that was the most common way to say that at the time it was translated.
Yeah, and that's precisely where I'm going with, like, the heavy hand of Tolkien the editor.
Yeah.
I think later on he would be translating this Red Book of Westmarch much more directly, much more literally. But in this early chapter, he was translating about, express trains and stuff like that. And this is kind of in that same vein.
Yeah, I think this is probably, when you mentioned you didn't like the Hobbit book, I think it's even heavier handed like that when you're reading The Hobbit.
It is, and that heavy translation hand is not one that I particularly appreciate.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Well, I think that does it for our rings. Now let's do our things. What's your first quote, JD?
So I picked, and I might have already picked this one in the movie, but that's okay. I wish it need not have happened in my time, said Frodo. So do I, said Gandalf. And so do all who live to see such times. But it is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what we do with the time that is given to us. This is a contender for like my favorite quote from the whole book. It's really good. I see, it's shared around on Facebook, even in like not Lord of the Rings centered spaces, just like memes with that text on it. It's still attributed to Tolkien, thankfully, but I wouldn't be surprised if I saw it eventually just ripped onto something else.
Albert Einstein.
Yeah, Albert Einstein said that. I do again think Tolkien, he witnessed and lived through World War I and lived through the times of World War II as well. So I think this quote is kind of him speaking a bit of his. He lived through arguably crazier times than anybody else in modern world. So I think it applies to his experience in World War I and it speaks onward and out. I don't think if Tolkien didn't go through World War I, he could have written that,
Yeah, he definitely used a lot of the wisdom that got him through that in some of these quotes, for sure. One of my favorite quotes from this part of the chapter, another classic, is pity. It was pity that stayed his hand. Pity and mercy, not to strike without need. And he has been well rewarded, Frodo. Be sure that he took so little hurt from the evil and escaped in the end because he began his ownership of the ring so, with pity. Of course, this is from Gandalf talking about Bilbo and some of his first actions with the ring, pitying Gollum.
Yeah.
And sparing Gollum. And so this gets back to where we were talking about that how you begin your ownership with the ring is so important. Mm-hmm. And this is precisely the quote that I would appeal to say that such an interpretation is canon.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of times I've asked this too, I know, but like this whole conversation was broken up throughout the whole movie. I wonder why like this was put in Moria, for example. Just pacing for the movie maybe, but
it's a great question, ripe for interpretation. My first answer is that's where we see Gollum for the first time. Mm-hmm. We have a short camera cutaway where we see Gollum peering through a little grate in Moria.
Yeah.
And so seeing Gollum with the Fellowship there and then having these quotes juxtaposed with Gollum's presence seems a powerful film device.
I agree, and I think it is done to good effect.
Oh, I absolutely done to good effect. But that's what I'm seeing with it, is that we get to actually see Gollum there as we're talking about Gollum.
Yeah, that does make sense. Otherwise, the movie would either have to cut to Gollum just like if they did this scene, they would either just have to show Frodo and Gandalf talking back and forth with no Gollum on the screen, or like cut away to Gollum while they're having that conversation to have him on screen. And either way, I don't think it's as good as him actually being there, like in Moria.
Yeah.
So that is a good point on this one. I just like this whole conversation being all at once, right at the beginning, is super helpful. All of this being upfront and on the table, really, like, that was very difficult for me in the movie, for it to like be so spread out or not even answered or cut completely.
Yeah.
So I think there's strengths to both. I'm not really harping on how the movie did it, but I think either way, the differences have effects and strengths and weaknesses either way that they would have done it.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like books and films are different media.
Yeah. This is definitely. I think so far I'm enjoying the book more, and I'm only chapter 3. But this right at the beginning is really important to me. But I could also don't know how good it would have translated to a movie if they just did it the way the book did.
Yeah, I don't think a lore dump like this goes very well on film, personally.
No.
But I do have one more favorite quote, another classic from Gandalf.
Yeah, this is actually another contender for my favorite from the whole series, too.
There's so many good quotes in this chapter. Many that live deserve death, and some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them? Then do not be too eager to deal out death and judgment, for even the very wise cannot see all ends. I have not much hope that Gollum can be cured before he dies, but there is a chance of it, and he is bound up with the fate of the ring. My heart tells me that he has some part to play yet, for good or ill, before the end, and when that comes, the pity of Bilbo may rule the fate of many, yours not the least. I think this is another very profound quote, where it's emphasized that, you don't have the right to take someone's life, even if they arguably deserve it.
Yeah.
You don't have the right to take that person's free will.
Right.
We were talking about domination and doing good in the name of righteousness. And if you can't hand out justice by giving the people who deserve to live their life, you also don't have the right to try to deal out a twisted form of justice by taking the lives of those that you think deserve to die. They still have roles to play in the great song of the world. I
will say that, Gandalf isn't a pure pacifist, despite this quote seeming he has, pacifistic tendencies. He's okay with, partaking in a battle, for example, but I get how that's different than executing Gollum after Bilbo takes the ring. But, there in the quote in itself, he references many that live deserve death. He doesn't think that it's never okay to kill another sentient being, but he's cautioning against choosing to do it, and to do that soberly, and as a last resort if there's no other options, like in self-defense cases, stuff like that.
There's a big difference between killing in the heat of battle when someone's attacking you and killing a pitiable creature in cold blood.
Yeah, he said, he doesn't say, and to be fair, the quote does not say never deal out death and judgment, but it says basically never do it.
It says don't be too eager to deal out death and judgment. And then it reminds you that even if you're very wise, you can't see all ends.
Right, exactly. It's a reason why not to do it, but it's not, he's not saying completely prohibiting death or murder in any case,
I think an important aspect of this quote is also the idea that people can be cured.
Right.
That he doesn't have much hope that Gollum can be cured before he dies, but there's still some. And there's always going to be some hope for even the most hardened, far-gone person in the world, and it's not up to us to decide that someone is beyond that hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was just looking at all the different nuance of this, because it is I think it's such a buttoned up way to look at this, moral quandary, from the philosophy and the ethics of it and the moral justification. I think it's so precise. It's precisely worded, because to fit Gandalf's character, but also to fit, the worldview that Gandalf's espousing,
Mm-hmm. And if Gandalf had executed Gollum, because he absolutely deserves death, if Gandalf had assumed that he couldn't be healed, that he needed to deal out death and judgment, there wouldn't have been Gollum there to destroy the ring at the very end.
Yeah. The fact that Gollum existing ends up destroying the ring is exactly what makes this quote hit so much more powerfully.
First it was Bilbo's pity that saved Gollum, then it was Gandalf's pity that saved Gollum.
Yeah. I think this quote, especially with the even just out of context, is amazing, but with the context of the whole story and Gollum's arc, it just really is so powerful.
I agree. So let's continue letter 131 in our language, lore, and letters.
Mm-hmm.
In this next portion of the letter, Tolkien gives a brief summary of what would later become the Silmarillion. He's talking about his greater mythology behind the Lord of the Rings. The Silmarillion, of course, wasn't written and wasn't published at this time. This is just Tolkien talking about his ideas and early drafts, basically. So first, Tolkien describes the cosmological order of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
The Valar have authority, rule, governance of the world, but he specifies that they do not have any creative power.
Mm-hmm.
That is reserved for Iluvatar. The Valar have incomplete foreknowledge of the world because they basically read the cliff notes from before the world was created.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting the way he put it. It sounded like they were like fans of a show or something. And
That's basically what it was.
Yeah. That's so I really like that.
Iluvatar makes the Ainur, the Valar and the Maiar and all the other angelic beings, and they all sing a great opera, a great song, the music of the Ainur.
Mm-hmm.
And in this song is all or most of the information that is needed to create the world. Iluvatar has some secrets that he's kept to himself.
Mm-hmm.
Iluvatar personally creates elves and men who are, not spelled out in the music. Free will still exists, but this music is what the Ainur know, and this music contains foreknowledge. This is part of why Gandalf has some sense of what's going to happen. Since he's been incarnated into a human body, he's also forgotten a lot of his foreknowledge as well.
Yeah.
So he's left with like movements of the heart and gut instincts a lot.
He's not a Valar as well. He's one tier below.
He's Maiar. Let me get the number right here. He's a Maya, and but he would have still heard and participated in that same music.
Wait, okay. I know we've been over it before, I think, but Maiar, are they subordinate or just a type of Valar?
They're different in class, but not in kind.
Okay, got it.
So he's the same species as the Valar, but he's not the CEO. He's different in class. But he would have heard and participated in the same song that all the Valar participated in. He's forgotten a lot of it because it didn't transfer when he got incarnated.
Yeah.
But the Valar, in their full Ainuric glory, have a lot of this foreknowledge. They're not omnipotent or omniscient like Iluvatar would be.
Yeah, that's another interesting thing, that the Valar are like deities or gods, but they're not truly fully omnipotent too. Like they only have partial knowledge. I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Because they've read these cliff notes, but they haven't read the actual book.
Mm-hmm.
And Tolkien admits that he created this balance between Iluvatar and the Valar and everything so as to be acceptable to, quote, a mind that believes in the Blessed Trinity, end quote. It would cause a suspension of disbelief, and therefore to Tolkien a failure in art, if he created a cosmological reality in variance with his own religious convictions.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that he felt was consistent with secondary belief. This was a world that he could believe in and invest in while not betraying any Catholic beliefs.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much I follow his train of thought there, where like I think you could create a world where that is cosmologically inherently different than what you believe our world is, and just still like go under the assumptions and still believe that those could be true in your fictional world.
And of course, this is just Tolkien's opinion, and Tolkien can be wrong as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's not really even he's saying that's true in all cases just for his writing, which I respect that he knows that about himself. And I don't, maybe I should take a look at what he said about that and consider it deeper and see how much that could apply to if I were to make a fictional world, for example.
I think what Tolkien is trying to get at here, and like I said, it's just Tolkien's opinion, so take it for what it's worth. But I think what he's trying to get at here is that if he were to create a cosmological system in complete variance to the Catholic beliefs he held, that would cause a suspension of disbelief instead of true secondary belief.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I get what he's saying on paper. I don't inherently feel that way about being creative, I guess, or
it's
writing.
also your own personal relationship with a suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm as hard on a suspension of disbelief as Tolkien is, personally.
I think also this goes to Tolkien has a more concrete worldview on this sort of thing, and my metaphysical beliefs about the universe are very loosey-goosey. Mm-hmm. I don't know what's going on, so I just work here, you know? So, like, Tolkien had he's a devout Catholic. He has very doctrinal and structured beliefs about the order and the cosmology of the universe, and I do not. So I think that's a big difference, too.
Yeah. Well, Iluvatar was responsible for creating elves and men specifically. They were not something in the music.
And this was a secret, too. They didn't know about that from the Cliff Notes.
Yeah, they came after the Cliff Notes.
Wow, I feel like that's the whole point, but I guess, that would be like a big plot twist. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, well, Iluvatar likes some big plot twists sometimes, I guess. Iluvatar gifted the elves with immortality. Quote, "To love the beauty of the world, to bring it to full flower with their gifts of delicacy and perfection, to last while it lasts, never leaving it even when slain, but returning, and yet, when humans come, to teach them and make way for them, to fade as humans grow." End quote. So, specifically, this quote makes me question the purity of any elven attempt to slow or stop their fading process. Enter elven rings.
It gave me them. I don't understand with this how they were fading at all. Like, it clearly was happening, but if they were granted immortality and to last while it lasts, the only way that they would be going is if the world ended, is what it makes it sound like.
Yes, but the quote also says that they were made to fade as humans grow.
Yeah.
Basically, elves were supposed to step off the spotlight of the stage and do whatever fading is. It's another one of those ambiguous words, consume or put the fear of fire on. Here we have, what does fade really mean?
Yeah.
It's a great question.
Like to me, it could even mean in this sentence, like, fade in influence and power, not necessarily like in metaphysical existence. They could just fade as humans grow and become more prominent. Elves aren't the only prominent sentient species.
I just had a thought. What if the elves' reaction to whatever this fate of fading is determines the nature of the fading?
Oh, right. Like how getting the ring affects the ring?
By fighting their fading so badly with elven rings and trying to preserve their role and all this stuff, what if it makes the fading worse?
Yeah, maybe.
If they had just accepted their fate of fading, maybe it's more like what you're describing.
Yeah, where they just aren't the dominant. Like, they could have just. Yeah, and then the actual, like, fading that they're worried about is caused by them trying to preserve and we were talking about, like, how it's morally questionable, but I think based off of and I haven't seen much, I haven't read the Silmarillion, but it sounds like they were absolutely not supposed to be doing the elven rings even. No,
I question the elven rings a lot. Like, obviously the elven rings are not evil like the One Ring, and they, there's different forces at work. They're not inherently evil, they're not inherently corrupting, but I think there's definitely some questionable motives behind what made them.
Yeah, and I mean, that was, it was Gil-galad who decided to make the elven rings to stop the fading.
Celebrimbor made the rings.
Mm-hmm.
And
under his commission, though, right?
Well, in Rings of Power.
Oh, okay.
It's a lot more vague in the book.
Okay. Got it. Yeah.
But even in the book, I think the elven rings are pretty questionable.
Yeah, it is. And that's I was about to say in the show, Gil-galad was very, especially early in the first season, most of the first season, I did not like that man. Mm-hmm. Or that elf, sorry.
And this is one of the things I really do like about Rings of Power is how they're really tackling this question of the questionability of the elven rings. They're really fleshing it out. They're filling in gaps. They're putting in a lot of stuff that the book doesn't have because the book is vague. You know, we had how many examples of vagueness already in just this episode?
Right.
Imagine how vague it is when you're doing a plot summary of the Silmarillion.
Yeah.
So obviously the show is having to fill things in and make details about precisely how things go. But I really like that they're leaning into this question and exploring this because it's something that has bothered me from the books already, and I'm liking to see that exploration on screen.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm throwing a lot back and forth about the elves fading in the head and how what you just said about like their reaction causing the actual manifestation of that fading, and how that kind of like that reminds me a lot of how the One Ring operates, and it seems like that's just kind of maybe how magic operates. It has a lot to do with your intent and reaction and actions in this world and how it specifically affects you.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Iluvatar was not going to just give a gift to elves. He gifted men with, quote, mortality, freedom from the circles of the world, end quote.
Okay, I misread that as cycles, but I think it's basically the same idea. Cycles and circles of the world. I don't think is there a meaningful difference? I've
always interpreted circles of the world to just mean, like, all of the different boundaries that you could give the world. I'm thinking like Old Norse myths of like the different guards and stuff like that, like Asgard and Jotunheim and all of the different worlds there, and like you could have the circle of your house and the circle of your town and the circle of your state and the circle of the world, the circle of the solar system. Like that's just kind of how I interpreted circles
barriers,
of the word.
Basically.
Yeah. So like mortality frees us from the entire world.
Right. I guess what I got from that is it was interesting. I misread it, so part of this thought I had might be a little bit bordering on nonsense, but I thought it was interesting that the mortality was their freedom, where elves are, since they're immortal, stuck within the rules of the world. I think it's a very interesting, dying frees you from what I thought it said, the cycles of the world. Like I was thinking like seasonal cycles, like the elves are trapped, like seasons changing can't be changed, where men have a beginning and an end, so they aren't like, a season changing where you just endlessly loop. You have a certain path in life.
And I think that still works.
Yeah, even though it's not what it said.
Yeah, but I think that perception still works, though. Death is described as, quote, a grief and an envy to the immortal elves. And
that is so funny, considering that immortality is what all the humans especially all the bad things humans do, like come from a desire or trying to be immortal or not die at least.
And I think some of this gets at the idea that you're never going to be happy with what you have.
Right. The elves want mortality and the humans want immortality.
Exactly.
I don't think the elves really want mortality, but I guess it's said right there they do. But like from what I've seen in Rings of Power and The Lord of the Rings, they don't act like they want mortality.
They don't want to fade, but they want freedom from the world sometimes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, both, but
fading is different than death.
Having your cake and eating it too.
Exactly. The purpose of death is hidden from the elves and therefore not accounted for in their mythology. Mm-hmm. So there's very little written in The Lord of the Rings, if anything, about what happens to men after they die. This is a complete mystery to everyone in the universe.
And that's why it's because elves don't care, since they don't have to worry about it.
I don't think that all elves don't care, but it is more of an academic problem for sure.
Yeah.
And it's just not something that's been revealed.
Yeah.
There's hope of an afterlife, but precisely what happens after men die is unknown.
Yeah, so we know like the whole elven afterlife and everything, but it is just not at all known for men, and I presume hobbits even too.
what you're calling the elven afterlife is, when we're talking about human afterlife alongside it, is I'm going to insist upon not calling it an afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
It's, Valinor is part of the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real physical place that is part of the world. It's been removed from the world after a time, so that it's not accessible. But it's a real place. It's when an elf is slain, his spirit goes to this place and may or may not be rebodied, may or may not be sent back. But it's not heaven the same way that we're talking about human spirits being freed from the circles of the world. Valinor is a circle of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, that makes some sort of sense. So, since Valinor is part of the world, when an elf dies, its spirit goes there. It doesn't have an afterlife. It's just a continuation of that life.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah, and there is a sense in which we can talk about it as an elven afterlife. I'm not trying to, be too persnickety about this, but when we're specifically talking about humans being freed from the circles of the world, I think it's important to emphasize the idea that Valinor is a circle of the world.
Yeah, and I get too, like, that since, there's not even, they won't, once they're, like, slain and or otherwise perish, they are sent to another part of the world, and depending on, I'm presuming, choices they make in other circumstances, will or won't be rebodied. It really does feel like a continuation of life too. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like, and it seems like do elves, once they re-embody, still have memories just like they would if they weren't slain?
Yep.
Yeah, that it is not really an afterlife then at all.
No, it's much more a circle of the world.
Mm-hmm. And then for men, there's just nothing known in the lore about what happens in their afterlife then.
Death is the next great adventure.
and hobbits are with men on that end, right?
Yes.
Dwarves too?
So it's a great question. It depends on whether you believe what the elves say or what the dwarves say.
Okay.
So the elves will tell you that dwarves, when they die, simply return to the stone from which they were created.
Oof.
But dwarves will tell you that Aule has specific halls set aside for them after they die, and they will serve Aule specifically until the end of the world. And then Aule will have a great job for them to do on the rebuilding of the world after that.
Those are both horrible. You either have eternal work or eternal nothingness. Those are rough afterlives for dwarves. Oh my goodness.
Well, I think the dwarves are really looking forward to getting to smith around with Aule.
Yeah.
They're dwarves.
Yeah, they're happy to do it, I guess. I don't know of, I guess Valhalla's eternal battle, which could be seen as work, but I don't think of, there's many afterlives in real world that are, you have a job, and that's the afterlife, and you're supposed to be happy about it.
Well, I think the dwarves are happy about it. Yeah. I think it says more about dwarves than anything else.
It is pretty reminiscent of Valhalla, too, though.
Except without all the dying.
Yeah. You
gotta die every day in Valhalla.
Yeah, but I think they're happy about that, right? Traditionally, that's, like, the idea.
I think the illusion of it being Viking heaven is a bit more of a modern spin on it.
Okay.
I don't think the Norse were too happy about Valhalla necessarily. Maybe individuals were.
Maybe they were neutral about it as a society.
Yeah, it was kind of like all our afterlives are kind of bad kind of thing.
Yeah.
It is kind of more like my perception of what the historical Norse might have thought.
Yeah. Okay. So, but the dwarves are explicitly happy about this. For the most part.
I'd say so based on how the elves report that the dwarves feel.
So the elves think the dwarves are happy about it, at least.
My perception of what the elves report.
So many layers.
Yes, exactly.
And then the elves just think that they just turned to, like, they're basically saying they don't really think the dwarves have a soul at all then.
Kind of racist, huh?
They're just, like, biological, like, I guess how, like, some denominations would view dogs or something, you know?
Yeah.
Eesh.
Well, let's talk about the ring verse from this chapter and some magical melodies. This is a verse long known in elven lore, as it's described.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have a few reflections on the poetry here for this verse. I noticed that the elves and dwarves both have a hyphenated descriptor. We know how I love my hyphens.
Yeah.
But men are just described as mortal, with no hyphenated rank, not like elven kings or dwarf lords.
Mm-hmm.
We know that some of the men who got rings were nobles, but perhaps there were several who were not. And I wonder if that's maybe why men have a different type of descriptor here. It's all elven kings or all dwarf lords.
Yeah.
But men may have had a broader population that the rings were distributed to.
Yeah, they might even get into like prominent upstarts or rebels too. I could see Sauron doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Maybe people who weren't even that prominent.
Just a guy.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
Just a guy in a raft, maybe. The verse does not emphasize the differing origins of the rings. It doesn't go into like Celebrimbor made the elven rings and Sauron helped make the other rings or anything like that. If we didn't know that the elven rings weren't made by Sauron, this verse certainly doesn't inform us of that.
Right.
What this verse does tell us, though, is that the elven rings are absolutely subject to the One.
Mm-hmm.
We can definitely get that from the verse, because it's one ring to rule them all after it's laid out what all the different rings. It doesn't say that the one ring rules them all except the elven rings.
Oh, that wouldn't flow as well either.
Yeah. I'm sure you could render it in poetry somehow.
Yeah, no, I know.
Now, the first 5 lines of this poem have a definite rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
3 rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone. It goes on and on. Then the next 2 change the rhythm. After we get those first 5 lines, then the next 2 change the rhythm, and then the last line returns to the first rhythm again. Now, this is not my original idea. This is something I heard from the Tolkien professor Corey Olsen, but I really agree with this interpretation, so I want to mention it. That the 2 lines in the middle, which change up the rhythm, first of all, are the poetry that's inscribed on the ring.
Mm-hmm.
And then the interpretation of this is that these 2 lines are part of the magic that Sauron uses to create the One Ring. One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. So the theory goes that was part of the magic spell that Sauron used to make the ring. This is the verbal component of that spell.
Got it. That makes sense.
It states the purpose of the One Ring, and words have power.
Yeah. It's not like repeating them would give more power to the One Ring, though, would it? Or like speaking those words out of that context doesn't affect that at all.
No, but Sauron speaking it over the ring when he was making it would have imbued that power to it.
Right. Okay.
It's a little bit like "Let there be light" kind of thing.
Yeah, got it. And that's what. And so the reason that it changes is because the first 2 sets of rings... Is this like evidence that this first 2 sets of rings might not have been made by Sauron early on from it? Because they have a different rhythm and cadence, and then the One Ring changes after Sauron comes in and starts to add his influence to it? Am I way too in the weeds here?
What I was trying to get at was like the first 5 lines were written by an elven scholar.
Yeah.
And then the next 2 lines are literally lifted from the words that Sauron spoke.
You got it.
And then the last line returns it back to what the elven scholar was writing because you can't end it on Sauron's words.
Right.
But if we take a look at the poem real quick, it goes 3 rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the dark lord on his dark throne, in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them, in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie.
And these are all inscribed on this One Ring?
Just the One Ring lines are on the ring. The first 5 lines and the last line are not. But those middle 2 lines where the rhythm changes are what's on the ring.
Okay.
So the argument goes that those two lines are something that Sauron actually spoke in a spell to make the ring. He inscribed it on the ring, and the difference in cadence comes from the difference in authorship.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then the fact that it's surrounded by the elven authors too kind of shows the it kind of shows. So it was one way Sauron came around and messed with the rings, but the last sentence being back to elven authorship and the cadence and rhythm kind of in a way shows like a hope of Sauron's reign and influence ending.
I love that interpretation. Love it. I wanted to look a little bit at those two lines that Sauron writes, though.
Yeah.
And look at what it actually says. First, I noticed that the ring rules. That's the first thing. One ring to rule them. Mm-hmm. Then the ring finds. One ring to find them. Then the ring brings. One ring to bring them. And finally, the ring binds. One ring to, and in the darkness bind them. There is no function this ring has that does not stem from the domination of ruling.
Yeah, that's the first thing. It does.
Yep. First it rules, then it finds the things that it needs to rule, then it brings those things, and then it binds those things. So the first and core function of this ring is the domination of ruling. Everything else flows from that dominion.
And I mean, that's why the ring is a ring of domination. That's its whole thing, you know?
And that's why it's inherently evil.
Yeah.
You can follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram through the links in the description. Please follow, like, and subscribe on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and other major podcast platforms. To have your question or comment featured on the podcast, please send an email to shirepost.ringsandthings@gmail.com.
If you are enjoying the podcast, please consider contributing to our efforts through the Patreon link in the description.
A hearty hobbity thank you to our first supporter, Lori J. from Florida. We are deeply grateful for your support.
A special thank you to our editor and spiritual producer, Stephen Jeffrey, and thank you for listening.